Hi guys, so let's talk about the area and volume of a rectangular prism. Okay, so two rectangular prisms have the same volume. Okay, the area of the base of the blue prism is 4 and 1/8 square units. Okay, so the area, meaning the base times the width, right? We just don't know how tall it is. Okay, so base and width, or length and width. Okay, we know that that is a total of 4 and 1/8 square units. The area of the base of the red prism is half of the blue prism. Okay, so if the area of this one is 4 and 1/8, then this is going to be half of that. Okay, which statement is true? And they've already given you the equation here, if you can see it. B equals 1/2 times 4 and 1/8 square units, okay? So what's true? The height of the red prism is half the height of the blue prism. Do we know that? The red prism is half of that of the blue prism. Well, do we know that the height is half of it? That wasn't guaranteed. It said that the base was half, right? It said that this part is half, but it never said anything about the height. So I don't think that's going to be right, okay? The height of the red prism is the same as the height of the blue prism. Does it say anything like that on here? Two rectangular prisms, same volume. It doesn't say that. Okay. The height of the red prism is twice the height of the blue prism, and the height of the red prism is 4 times the height of the blue prism. Well, I'm not quite sure, but I do know that it's not the first two. It's got to have to do with the height here, okay? So let's look at some math help.
Use the formula V equals B times H to solve this problem. First, write the equation V equals 4 and 1/8 times H for the volume of the blue prism. Then, write an expression for the height of the red prism. If you think it is half the height of the blue prism, write 1/2 times H. Next, write V equals 1/2 times 4 and 1/8 times 1/2 times H for the volume of the red prism. Finally, simplify to see if V equals 4 and 1/8 times H is the same as V equals 1/2 times 4 and 1/8 times 1/2 times H. Do this until you find the correct height.
Okay, so it's saying do a lot of guesswork, which is fine, I guess. But I think what I want to try doing is, as they said, simplifying this first. So if I've got this 1/2, and I'm writing this down on a piece of paper, maybe that would be a good idea for you. 1/2 times 4 and 1/8 times 1/2 times H, okay? And I am trying to get that to be this equation, because remember, if we've got equivalent equations, we've got an equivalent area, or a volume, sorry. Okay, so when I do this, I'm going to use my calculator, close this for a second, use my calculator, okay, and I am going to do 0.5, which is the same as 1/2, times, well, actually, I'm going to start over for a second, because I don't know what 1/8 is, so I'm going to do 1 divided by 8, whoopsies, 1 divided by 8 to get what that is, okay? So 1/8 is the same as 0.125. So that means that my 4 and 1/8 is 4.125. And I'm going to multiply that times 0.5 and again times 0.5 because I have to multiply it by 2 halves based on that equation that we had with the math help, if you remember. Okay, so when I did this, and I just drag it all the way. You see that this is 1/2 and you have this as 1/2, so there's 2 1/2s. So I'm going to multiply my answer by 0.5 twice, but let's go back to that calculator. All right, so I'm going to multiply this times 0.5 and times 0.5, okay? So that gives me this decimal, which is ridiculous. But what I need to know is that the same as 4 1/8 times height. This is less than 1, and I was supposed to get 4 1/8. So I'm going to say nope, because I still have to multiply this by h, and that's not right. But I'm still confused, so I'm going to go back to the math help and see what else I can find from that second math help.
This problem is that the prisms have the same volume. The base of the red prism is smaller than the base of the blue prism. So the red prism cannot have the same volume if it is the same height as or shorter than the blue prism. Therefore, you must decide whether it makes more sense for the height of the red prism to be 2 times or 4 times the height of the blue prism.
Okay, so now I'm going to think about my equation a little bit differently, and I wish I could show you with a pen. But what I'm going to start thinking about is if I replace that 1/2 height, because that was that first example, right? That was what we had thought about for the first time. If instead of replacing the 1/2 height from the example number 1, instead of replacing this 1/2 here, I'm going to try putting in a 2. So that means I'm going to be doing 0.5 for the half times 4.125, because that is the 4 1/8. And then I'm going to multiply that. I'm going to try by 2 to see if doubling the height instead of having the height fixes the problem. Okay, so close my close my example here, and I'm going to click calculator so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to do 0.5 times 4.125 times 2. Remember, I need this 4.125 or this 4 1/8 to come out at the end. That's what I'm looking for, because it needs to be 4 1/8 times the height, okay? Because we want it to be equivalent. So what do we get when we do that? Wow! We get 4.125. Okay, so what did we multiply the height by? Going back to the question here. What did we have to multiply the height by? Did we multiply it by twice the blue prism, or did we multiply it by 4 times the blue prism? Well, if I'm remembering correctly, when I did my math, and I wish it would show us, when I did my math, I multiplied by 2, meaning that I doubled the height. So that would be twice the height. But if I'm still struggling, I can always ask the math help for the teacher portion. Again, you have to try first, but then you could go to the teacher if you needed it, okay? But I'm pretty sure it's this one, so I'm going to check. All right, nice, we got one right. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. Okay, it says that the edge of each cube used to build this rectangular prism is 1/2 inch long, okay? Which equation shows the volume of the prism in cubic inches? Okay, so if this is 1/2 inch, that means that this would be 1 inch. That means that this would be 1.5 inches. That would mean that this is 2 inches. So the base, or the length is 2. Now, if you remember the volume formula, it's length times width times height. But if you didn't remember that, you could click on this, and it would tell you that we're doing length times width times height, okay? So if 2 is my length, my width is going to be this back piece, right? Okay, but this is 1/2 inch, so this is 1/2, 2/2. 2/2 is the same as 1. So right now I'm doing 2 times 1. Pretty simple, right? But the last piece would have to be 1/2, 2/2, 3/2. So I'm going to multiply that by 3/2. Remember, 2 is the same, since we've got fractions down here, 2 is the same as 4/2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is the same as 2/2. 1, 2. Okay, and then 3/2 is going to stay 3/2. But the question is the math correct? So if I do 4 times 2 times 3, because we multiply across in fractions, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 3 is 24. Okay, so that gives me a numerator of 24. And then 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So if I have 24 over 8, that means that I can also do 24 divided by 8 to find my answer for a simplified fraction. And that gives me 3. So that is how I came to 3 as my answer. And we can check it. And we got it right. Now, if we didn't get it right, again, you've got this math help here, and you have the Imagine teacher to help you. And if you're still not getting it, please let me know. Okay? Then we can go on to the next piece here, last piece that we're going to go through together. And we have which expression show the volume and the surface area of the cube-shaped box. Okay, what do we know about a cube? A cube has square sides, meaning that the length, the width, and the height are all the same. So I'm going to multiply the same thing 3 times. And remember, repeated multiplication can be shown with the use of cubic exponents, okay? So that's why you see this 3 here, okay? But when I'm looking for volume, am I going to need to multiply it by the number of sides the shape has? No, so that means these are wrong. They just can't be right, okay? So that leaves us with these two, okay? And if I'm looking for surface area, remember that surface area is the total area of surface of the solid figure. So the surface area is the sum of the area of all the surfaces. So I'm looking for the sides. How much area does each side have? Okay, so looking at my cube, I have 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides, and you got to remember that you also have the bottom, the side that's next to this side, and the back. So that gives us a total of 6 sides. So whatever I'm doing for the surface area has to be multiplied by 6, which only left these 2 options, except that we already said this one's wrong. So this is going to be my right answer. But you have to also remember that we are multiplying that 11/4 by 11/4 because 2 3/4 is 11/4. So if this side is 11/4, the bottom is also 11/4 because this is a square, and squares have the same side lengths on all sides. And when we're looking for surface area, we're looking to multiply those two together because we're trying to find the area. Now, if I've completely confused you at this point, you can always use the math help, in which they're probably going to say similar to what I did. But if you still need that other help, you can use it. Okay, and if that still doesn't make sense, you go on to this one that's talking about the surface area specifically, which is length times width. Now, if you're still confused, of course, I highly recommend you going and talking to the Imagine teacher by using this button. Keep in mind that you should be taking notes on all of this, simply because you can go back to those notes as you go through the practice and the post-quiz. So it's highly recommended that you use your notes for that. Right, we're going to check it, and we got it right. Okay, and there's also notes that come afterwards that remind you of why you're correct in case you were one of those people that were between two and needed to check your work, and you kind of gave an educated guess. Okay? All right, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to click next. We finished that section. I am not going through the problem solving with you, so we're going to move forward. But I hope this was helpful. If it wasn't, please let me know, and I would be happy to send you some more information.